even summer day 여긴 항상 내가 everyday 별로사야 하늘을
Hello and welcome to my channel. So today, in light of Boys Planet starting, we're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive. The main point of this video is that I will be doing an early prediction of the final lineup, as well as explaining some of my theories about how the season will play out. I was able to predict 7 out of 9 members of Kepler at the end of the second episode of Girls Planet, so I thought it would be fun to do this again with Boys Planet and turn it into a video. I actually already did this prediction and made this video right after episode 1, but I wasn't able to post it before episode 2, so I felt the need to update the script a little so it wasn't confusing. Luckily though, my predictions haven't changed at all. I'm actually more confident in what I originally came up with. So after spending hours looking into all of the contestants, watching all their fan cams, paying attention to how they've been edited or perceived by fans so far, and really analyzing patterns I saw in the produced seasons and Girls Planet, I've put a lot of thought into my predictions and I'll lay it all out for you. Now, there are a lot of necessary things I want to talk about before I actually get into the contestants themselves. First of all, I really want to emphasize that I have no vendettas here. Everything I explain in this video is purely based on unbiased observations. There are some contestants who are at the top of my picks that I think don't stand a chance, and that's why they didn't end up in this video. And if I end up being super wrong about everything, that's totally okay. Secondly, I'm going to take a few minutes to walk you through the most important criteria I had to base these predictions on, because it will be necessary to understand my explanations. I will be putting timestamps with titles for the individual theories and predictions, so if you're already really well informed about any of these things, feel free to skip around. Okay, I think we can get started now. One pick power is absolutely the most important thing any contestant needs to debut in these shows. For those who don't know what one pick power means, it essentially has to do with the voting mechanisms throughout the season. Because it's very early in Boys Planet, voters are currently required to vote for 9 contestants at once. This means that there are many contestants who are generally well liked by fans that rank very high in the early rankings, while contestants who have huge dedicated fan bases but aren't popular with the public rank low. However, as the season goes on, voters become more limited in the amount of contestants they're allowed to vote for. By the finale, fans will only be able to vote for 1 contestant. That means that only the trainees who have the qualities to build a huge, very dedicated fan base will be chosen. Hyuning Bahi from Girls Planet is a great example of this. She consistently ranked towards the bottom the whole season due to a major lack of screen time or popularity with general viewers, but outside of the show, she was the most hyped up contestant and had so many people tune in and vote solely for her, which resulted in her getting second place at the end. As opposed to the produced seasons, one pick power is something that's going to be a more complicated factor now that international fans are allowed to vote. A lot of trainees will have very increased voting power with fans of the country they're from, and this will help them get past many eliminations. But on the other hand, this also means when it comes to the finale, where votes from Korean fans are weighed much higher, and a vast majority of them will be picking their one favorite Korean contestant, things will become very competitive for the G group trainees that were able to cruise by every other elimination, which leads me to my next point. What's probably the most unfortunate aspect of Boys Planet is that G group contestants have so many more obstacles compared to K group. We've seen the effects of this in both Produce 48 and Girls Planet 999. Many non-Korean contestants are strung along for a good portion of the season, but when it comes to the finale where voters are forced to vote according to their priorities, foreign contestants are often left behind, and only 2 to 3 have big enough fan bases to overcome this. Even before the finale, foreign contestants have to deal with not getting the same opportunities as their Korean counterparts. The average K-group trainee will have much more screen time and be way more comfortable in the environment than the average G-group trainee, simply because this is a Korean show and that's just how it's played out in the past. Producers have even gone as far as to somewhat sabotage foreign trainees in other seasons because As much as they play up the whole idea of inviting foreigners and creating a global group, it seems that they don't really believe in this vision yet. This means that the producers have probably already picked a handful of G group contestants that they like and are willing to give a shot, and the rest will kind of be left in the dark. As many of us know, the reason we're supposed to call this season Boys Planet as opposed to Produce 101 is because the original series and brand was tarnished by the infamous rigging scandal. I don't think every Produce season was immediately planned out and rigged from the beginning. I think the producers initially worked their editing magic and then later relied on rigging after they got a sense of who the voters liked most. But at the end of the day, the producers had full control of who ended up in the final groups. With this new branding and new regulations, they don't have this power, which means they're probably going to be significantly more strategic with their editing. And to me, this was pretty obvious in Girls Planet. Whenever there was a contestant that they didn't like, suddenly rising in the rankings, 1 or 2 episodes later, they got an evil edit. And on the other hand, other contestants were given such good angel edits that it became a hot topic with fans. It actually kind of blew my mind how much power the editing had over results in Girls Planet. Rankings almost always reflected to a T exactly what the producers wanted to happen. So a theory I have right now is that the producers have probably chosen somewhere from 15 to 30 contestants that they would be okay with ending up in the final group. I think they're going to be very manipulative in the way that they'll leave more options open at first, only heavily pushing the most important contestants right now, but they'll become more forceful with their editing towards the end until rankings fully reflect what they want. This will probably include evil editing for some of the contestants they've highlighted so far, as well as pushing for new contestants whose rankings they want to see increase drastically. The rankings in the last 2 episodes are largely based on a combination of pre-season online hype and the producers' main favorites. Like I said, I definitely don't think the rankings are fully reflective of what producers want yet, and that they're gonna wait a few episodes before showing more of their cards. It's a little harder for me to figure out a pattern here, since Produce 101 didn't allow global voters, and Girls Planet's voting mechanism was so different from Boys Planet. In this case, I'm going to assume that about 5 or 6 of the contestants that have been in the top 9 so far will actually make it in the end. And this is where I can start getting into the individual contestants and some possibilities for the lineup. In my personal debut lineup prediction before the season began, there were 4 contestants I included because I think they're guaranteed to debut. All 4 of them have ranked in the top 9 both weeks so far. These contestants are hanbin, Zhang, yujin, and jiwoong. hanbin and Zhang are the 2 centers of the Signal song, which this alone would make them pretty much a shoo-in, but they're also both just wonderful contestants who are going to be very loved by the producers and the audience. They're very talented, intelligent, respectful, have good leadership skills, they look good standing next to each other, and they have great chemistry. This part is biased, but I honestly think they could even be the most likable centers we've ever seen. They're both just great choices, and the producers will absolutely take advantage of this. They'll get very good screen time. I would be shocked if either of them don't make the final lineup, and there's not really much else to say.
안녕?
I think Kim Jiwoong has arguably the strongest one-pick power within K-group right now, besides maybe hanbin. Jiwoong's past activities as an actor have already provided him with a huge fan base who I think are gonna vote for him no matter what. He also has great visuals, a lot of charisma, a likable personality, he's well-trained, and he has been getting great screen time, so he's pretty much got everything going for him. Assuming there won't be some kind of sabotage on the producer's part, I just don't see anything that can hinder his popularity enough for him to drop out of the top 9, especially considering he's been sitting pretty in 2nd and 3rd place so far. Han Yujin was already very popular, especially with Korean fans before the season even started, but after watching the first 2 episodes, it's pretty obvious that he's someone the producers really want in this group. His visuals have earned him much of his initial popularity, with him even being compared to TXT Subin frequently, which TXT is a group with a lot of hype right now. It also seems that the producers are setting up a very nice story arc for him, portraying him as naturally gifted and a contestant to really watch out for in the first episode, later showing that he's going to struggle because of his age and inexperience, but that he's going to work extremely hard to get through it. We know that Mnet likes the youngest member of these groups to be somewhere from 14 to 16 years old, and Yujin is the youngest contestant with the most potential, so I think the producers will really pull out all the stops to ensure his debut. There are 4 other contestants from the top 9 that have me more conflicted about whether I see them making it to the end. They are Kim Gyuvin, daeul, Seok Matthew, and Lee Ho-taek, also known as Hui from Pentagon. Gyuvin seems like a very obvious and safe choice to debut. He would likely be considered the visual of the debut group. He has a good personality and he actually is quite skilled as well. I also think the producers see him as one of the most ideal candidates. However, I'm just not 100% sure if he'll be able to maintain a large one-pick fanbase until the end of this season, especially because I think his image overlaps a lot with some other trainees who are also very popular. There have been contestants in past seasons who fit all of the same criteria: handsome, good personality, and hardworking, but this wasn't enough to debut them. I think his fate may come down to how much the producers feature him and what kind of story arc he gets. I definitely think he'll stay within the higher end of the rankings until the finale, and I'm leaning more towards the assumption that he will debut, but I can't be totally confident about it. The honest reason as to why I'm torn on whether Hui will make it to the final group or not is I'm really surprised that he's even on this show to begin with. Every previous season has had one or more of these kinds of contestants, meaning older, already debuted idols who are looking for a redemption arc, but he's kind of a special case, being way more experienced and a few years older than all of those contestants. So it's a lot more difficult for me to predict his outcome. The producers also do have a history of using these contestants to gain a lot of clout and viewership, while simultaneously hurting their chances because they don't want them in the group, probably because of their age. They've even rigged some of these contestants out of previous groups, and I think it's very possible that this is the kind of treatment Hui is going to receive. They've already been a little manipulative with his editing, especially in episode previews, although he does have a lot of support, and his maturity and really good attitude may make it too difficult for the producers to evil edit anyways. So if he can keep and even increase the numbers he has right now, I don't think he'll have an issue debuting. Matthew has so much going for him. He's very lovable, he's talented and stable, he's pretty, and he has a ton of support from the producers. And the little cherry on top is this story he has going on with hanbin. Highlighting these two as a dynamic duo with a sweet past is going to make it so that voters who are already in love with hanbin want Matthew in the group even more. His ranking increased nearly 30 places from episode 1 to 2, and that's very promising for him. However, the reason I'm not sure about him is that I don't know for sure if he'll be able to keep up this momentum and how much of a one-pick advantage he'll be able to gather. The best way I can really explain my reservations about whether he'll make it is I just have a feeling he could have a really similar run to Urina from Girls Planet, who everyone thought was going to debut no matter what, and then she just didn't. She was an extremely similar contestant who was very stable, had a lovable personality, and was liked by the producers, but her one-pick power just didn't get her there in the end, and that's a route I think is quite possible for Matthew.
달 무슨 달 쟁반같이 둥근 달 어디 떴나 보이즈 플랜에서 떴지.
So for Lee Daeul, he first gained a lot of attention in the initial Boys Planet teasers because of his visuals, and then later gained a lot more attention because of his Here I Am fan cam, and people quickly became really endeared by and attached to him. He also has a cute, seemingly quiet and humble personality, so he's become very popular for these reasons. However, based on the first evaluations, it seems that his abilities are pretty lacking. I think the producers will kind of milk how naturally likable he is in earlier episodes, but since there are only 9 spots in the debut group, if daeul's skills don't improve, there's a possibility producers and/or voters will divert their attention to other contestants who stand out more in important evaluations. But right now, I can't totally rule him out as a candidate for debut, as likability alone has proven to be enough for some contestants in the past, and his story could turn out to be way different than everyone is currently expecting. And this leaves 3 other trainees that have been in the top 9 that I think have the lowest chances of actually debuting: Kim Tae-rae, Anthony, and Jae. I would feel kind of icky really getting into and dwelling on all the reasons I don't personally see these 3 making it, so I'll be kind of brief. For Tae-rae, I think he's benefiting hugely from the 9-pick system, and I fear for his 1-pick ability. This is unfortunately a typical storyline for the reliable, strong vocalists in every season. With Jae and Anthony, I just don't think the producers are going to prioritize them, and they'll probably fall victim to the limited G group spots. I know some of you will probably disagree about Jae, but I think there's a difference between producers highlighting contestants that they actually want and highlighting contestants who will make for a good episode. I just don't think he's necessarily what the producers or Korean voters will be looking for in the end. Okay, so if we're assuming hanbin, junghyun, jiwoong, and yujin are the ones who will definitely debut, and we're on the fence with the others, who do I think could fill the remaining spots? Well, because it's so early in the season, there's a number of possibilities. Because this video would otherwise be way too long, I'm only going to give explanations for the ones I see having the most potential, and I'll put in a list here of the others I could definitely make a case for, but as of right now, I'm not convinced enough. As for the ones I will go into detail for, there are some trainees I'm going to group together when explaining, because I think they're similar enough that my reasoning could largely apply to either one. Hiroto and Keita are both Japanese contestants who have very large pre-existing fan bases, have appeared on other popular survival shows, have very similar personalities, very similar skills, and are around the same age. They've also had very similar rankings the past 2 episodes. Those are all the reasons I've grouped them together here, but I don't know how likely it is for both of them to debut. Keita is definitely more well-rounded in terms of his abilities. He's trained for a very long time, already debuted, got into the All-Star group, and was even helping train other contestants. Compared to Hiroto, I think people might perceive him to be more mature, even if they both have cute personalities. Hiroto is still quite well-rounded, not as much as Keita, but still enough that he'll probably see some positive attention for his talent eventually. Hiroto also has a naturally endearing look, which will appeal more to the fans that prefer cute-looking trainees. Before the season, I would have said Hiroto has an edge, but Keita is getting such incredible edits, especially because of his backstory, that it may be hard for Hiroto to compete with, but on the other hand, Hiroto does have more support from Korean voters. I definitely think the producers have their eyes on both of them though, and that at least one will debut. It just depends on how things play out. So for Moon Junghyun, I'm going to go into more detail because I think most people aren't even considering him as the debut candidate. However, I wholeheartedly believe he is very high on the producer's priority list, and I've actually been anticipating this since the Here I Am performance was posted. I think the editing of the Signal song is an extremely important indicator of who producers like, and he had the best editing besides hanbin, junghyun, gyuvin, and yujin. He not only had the 4th longest screen time, but was highlighted during several of the killing parts, which is what made me notice him from the first watch. Then in episode 1, despite not performing or being featured at all, he again had a lot of screen time because they were constantly using his reactions. And in episode 2, it was pretty blatant that the editing was in his favor during the star test with the Wake 1 trainees. They even compared him to Kang Daniel, who's quite literally the prince of Produce 101. 101 and used this comparison as the thumbnail for the performance. So why do I think the producers like him? He's one of the younger contestants, he has good visuals, he's really talented and got into the all-star group, he has a great media personality, and he's from woonggi Entertainment, the company that's associated with Mnet and is currently managing Kepler. It's kind of a given that the producers are going to heavily push at least one trainee from woonggi, and I think Junghyun is the most ideal candidate to them, especially because he's been extremely popular with Korean voters since before the show even began. My theory with him is that he's one of the contestants they're not throwing in our faces just yet, and that they'll wait a few episodes before really putting in the work to increase his ranking if it doesn't happen on its own. However, what's ultimately going to make or break him is if he can get a positive enough reception from international fans, or his support in Korea becomes strong enough to carry him.
Oh. 안녕.
Lee Seunghwan reminds me a lot of Seungyun from Produce X 101. He's even the same age Seungyun was back then. They have practically all of the same charms, and Seungyun didn't start out popular at all, but his likable qualities became so hard to ignore. Then he eventually turned into one of the highlights of the season and later debuted. Seunghwan is starting out Boys Planet very popular because of so much hype on the international side. He's not quite in the top 9, but it's very possible that his popularity will only increase as time goes on. On top of his good looks, he also has a fantastic personality, as well as a lot of idol experience and talent. While I think the producers do like him, I don't think he's at the absolute top of the priority list. I think it'll be up to him to continue to stand out enough and get himself good edits to keep up with how competitive the rankings will become. But I think his chances are still really strong, especially considering that there's not really anyone else rivaling his image right now. Seowon and woonggi are two other contestants that I think are going to have high rankings and attract similar fan bases, but I can only see the possibility of one debuting. They have similar personalities, both being quite loud, bubbly, and energetic, and they're around the same age and are already debuted idols. But aside from this, there are some differences that I think will be important in determining which one has the best chance of debuting. I think Seowon will kind of take on an older brother leader role in the season and probably gain attention for his more mature and confident side, and he does also have the benefit of some hype for his visuals. And like I mentioned, he has already debuted, but the group he's in, 9i, is a really new group with a very small fan base, so this probably won't benefit him that much. Woonggi, on the other hand, used to be a member of the group 2-1 along with another contestant, Oh Seungmin, and their departure from the group last year actually sparked a lot of outrage, both because of the confusing circumstances and Woonggi being one of the most popular members. Given the fact that Woonggi may not have another chance after this, he might have more dedicated fans rallying behind him than Seowon. Now, I do want to acknowledge that Woonggi is also under woonggi Entertainment, as that is the company that debuted his previous group, but I don't necessarily think he's going to see benefits like more screen time or great edits because of this. I think woonggi and Mnet letting him participate in Boys Planet was more so them throwing him a bone rather than some kind of organized effort to get him to re-debut. I actually think Seowon may even get better screen time than Woonggi. Right now though, I actually don't know who has the best shot between the two of them. I'm thinking Woonggi, but we'll have to see. The reasons I see the potential for Gunwook to debut are actually very similar to the reasons I explained for Junghyun, meaning I think he has many of the qualities the producers want in a member of the final group, and they'll really try to push him. He's also on the younger side, he has appealing visuals and a lot of charisma, he's talented with great leadership skills, and from what we've seen, he has a likable personality. Like Junghyun, he got very good screen time in the Signal song. Later, his demo stage in episode 1 was used as a preview before the episode even aired, and he alone was originally originally the thumbnail before it got changed to his full group. Now, he doesn't have the wake one privilege I cited for Junghyun, but he is from Jellyfish Entertainment, the same company as Kim Do-yeon from Girls Planet and Kepler, who was given spectacular edits, and it's not far-fetched to say the producers will do the same thing with Gunwook. I'm not very sure which demographics or regions he's the most popular with, so it's kind of difficult for me to determine how much voting power he has and what he would really need to ensure his chances of debuting. But I do know that he is overall quite popular right now, ranking 15th in episode 1 and 10th in episode 2, which is setting him on the right track. Wang Zihao is another contestant a lot of you might know nothing about, so again, I will be somewhat detailed with this explanation. Zihao has a significant one-pick advantage that has kept him in a huge first-place lead in the star support votings for days, mostly because of him having the biggest Boys Planet fanbase in China. This level of support he's received partly stems from him being a trainee under EXO member Yixing's company, but he actually does have a lot of good qualities to maintain and build this fan base. He's a fantastic dancer, and even a candidate for the best dancer on the show, but he's also just very talented in general, even becoming one of the very few G group trainees to be made an all-star. He also has good visuals and a really bright personality. All of this in mind, he seems like a contestant that could have a good shot. However, out of everyone I see the most potential in, he's the one that I see facing the most obstacles. He is Chinese and has pretty limited Korean speaking skills, and if you know about the concerning treatment of Chinese contestants in Girls Planet, you should understand why things could go wrong for him. I've been pretty confident from the beginning that Zihao isn't going to be given any favors by the producers, and this was pretty blatant with him getting mere seconds of screen time in the first 2 episodes, despite the fact that he was obviously receiving recognition for his talent. So I'm ultimately pretty torn with him. I think his one-pick advantage is way stronger than we can see right now, and I've been noticing people start to rally behind him and create a community to promote him well, but like I have been emphasizing, the producers have a ton of control, and this could be his downfall. Okay, so I've been kind of beating around the bush and exploring options for a hot minute, so it's time for me to give a concrete prediction. I'm not 100% sure, but here it is. I really tried hard to keep this unbiased, and I argued with myself a lot about some of them, but this is what I landed on. One thing I had to consider was keeping a balance between who the producers will push and who they won't be able to control getting in the top 9. I've already talked about the top 4, so for the others, I think it would be pretty unlikely for Hui to drop out. Junghyun and Gyuvin are just very produce-coded, and it's hard for me to picture the lineup without them. And both Hiroto and Keita have huge advantages of producer support in addition to their pre-existing fan bases. If I had to switch some people out, I would say Gunwook might take a spot from Junghyun or Gyuvin, and Matthew could take a spot from Hiroto or Keita. In the case that Hui doesn't debut, I think that would also open up a door for Gunwook, as well as any of the other Korean trainees I went into detail for. Like I said before, things could definitely change. It is so early in the season, and there's always a chance that the producers will subvert expectations. If we get to finale night and I totally miss the mark, we can all just look back on this and laugh. To wrap this video up, I want to encourage people to vote for the contestants they really like, regardless of if you think their odds are terrible or not, because with the changing dynamics of voting, things could change so drastically, and a lot of these guys really deserve to debut. And also, feel free to promote your picks in the comments if you want to, as well as share your thoughts on any of my opinions in this video. Please do be nice, but yeah, I am open to reading about maybe some other possibilities I didn't consider. I will probably make another video on Boys Planet either later in the season or after the finale, just depending on when I have some more thoughts and ideas that I would be able to turn into a video. So please subscribe if you would be interested in that, or if you would be interested in keeping up with all of my other K-pop videos. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. So for Lee Daeul, he first gained a lot of attention in the initial Boys Planet. We'll call it. Okay, so if we're assuming hanbin, junghyun, girl, please. My life is a joke. I have about 1 to 2 hours every single day that I can record, and I have to do it in one particular spot in my apartment. And if this is the shit that... Honey,